So our long-run average costs tend to go through three phases. So at the start of the life of a company, where it is expanding, it will tend to experience a positive improvement in increasing its size. So it will decrease its costs by increasing its size. And we describe that as being, it achieves economies of scale. So as it becomes a larger firm, it will be able to produce at a smaller cost per unit. Okay. The second stage is neutral, meaning that the costs are remaining constant. We have a constant returns to scale. So at the second stage, we have stopped achieving economies of scale in the particular company, right? The third stage, we actually can see negative effects with increasing costs due to diseconomies of scale. So diseconomies of scale is the opposite of economies of scale. When we're experiencing diseconomies of scale, each additional increase in the size of the firm will lead to a higher cost per unit, so less efficiency in the production process, leading to a higher cost per unit for each additional increase in the size of the firm. So if we like to show that on a type of a graph, we will see that the average total costs will be decreasing as we are achieving these economies of scale. So the firm is getting bigger, it's investing in new production facilities and hiring people, and for each additional increase in its scale, more facilities and people, the average cost per unit, which is a total cost per unit, is decreasing. Okay. Now those economies of scale will be achieved for a certain amount of time as the size of the firm is increasing, but if it keeps on increasing, we start to run out of these economies of scale, and we enter into this phase where there is a constant return to scale. Okay, so each additional increase in the size of the firm is not returning an improvement in the average total costs of the outputs. Okay, and then if the firm continues to increase its scale beyond a certain point, it will start to see diseconomies of scale. You could think of reasons for that as being maybe additional complexity in running an organization. An organization with 10,000 employees might need more managers, and it might be more difficult to manage than a company with 1,000 employees. So you might need to hire more managers per employee, and this would lead to diseconomies of scale. So increasing costs per unit. So the average total costs are increasing in this phase where the firm is experiencing diseconomies of scale. Phase 1, economies of scale. In this phase, the long-run average cost of production decreases as output increases. Okay? Economies of scale happen because there are some advantages to a firm being bigger. So one of the first advantages is it allows them to buy materials at bulk. So they might be able to negotiate a lower price by buying materials in bulk. They might be able to buy the latest, best, or certainly biggest machines. Okay, and these machines that might only be economic for larger and larger scale companies will increase the efficiency of the firm. The larger scale will allow for a greater degree of specialization in tasks, which also can lead to increased efficiency and therefore a reduction in the long run average cost. The larger firm finds it more easy to get loans at lower interest rates, meaning that they have a reduced cost of capital, therefore reducing their costs. And they're also able to spread costs over a larger amount of sales. So the fixed costs we talked about in the short run analysis become spread over a larger number of sales. In the second phase, the firm achieves a constant return to scale. So as the firm gets larger beyond a certain size, the total costs will start to increase proportionately with the quantity produced. So there's no reduction anymore in the unit costs. So the average cost will become constant for larger and larger scale. At this point on the graph, we can see a horizontal section because there is a constant returns to scale at this point in the graph. Beyond a certain scale, several firms will often start to see diseconomies of scale. So as they become larger, their unit costs become higher and higher. Okay, so this occurs when the long run average total cost rises as the quantity of output increases. So some of the reasons for that can be the increasing costs of organizing all of the inputs. So with the larger scale comes a larger complexity, and it might, for example, need extra layers of management. Okay, also to ensure communication between all the sections of the company. Duplication of effort. This can be sometimes because of poor communication within a very, very large organization. The same job could be being done by two different people. Okay, and you have an unnecessary inefficiency there. Also, there might be a drop-off in motivation from individuals feeling less involved in the decision-making of this very, very large firm, and this can lead to a decrease in productivity. An increased distance for delivery of products that would apply for a centralized manufacturing organization, for example. With the one hub, it will have to cover greater distances for delivery. And point 5, internal resistance to change. The large firm finds it more difficult to be dynamic and change than smaller competitors. And that's because people in the organization are more set in their ways, and they've achieved a certain level of specialization in what they do, so they don't necessarily want to change the way that they do things.